As-salaamu alaikum, guys. This is Muslim developers. And where did we stop last time?
Last time we've declared UI and connected it to the code, and today our plan is to declare the business logic so that our UI we can trigger some intelligent actions from UI and perform them in code.
Sounds interesting. Let's get it. Okay, let's start our application and see what we have so far. So here we have our main screen with pre-created habits. And now we can create new one. And here, as you can see, it became first responder. So it became active as soon as we launched the screen. We can type here and change our regularity. But what if we want to see what regularity do we have now?
I think we can configure it, right?
Yeah.
Let's actually, for that we can do several things. We can on one hand play with our UI. So let's choose the regularity slider here. And on the right side, as you can see, there are several things. The value, which we have now, and it's in the middle, that's why it's 0.5. And the minimum value and maximum value from 0 to 1. So in our case, since regularity is in days, maybe one thing we can do is to change the minimum value to 1, which means every day, and maximum value to 7, which means once in 7 days, right? So, and the initial value, let's leave it at 1. So initially it will be the daily regularity, right? On the other hand, we can also maybe show it the regularity using, like, since the initial value is 1, we will put 1 here. And now what we can do, let's create an action for our regularity slider. So we press Control, hold it, and then drag it to the screen. We can put it next to the cancel button tapped. So here, as you can see, the connection type is action. And here we can say that regularity changed.
And what you're setting is a value changed option, right?
That's right. So the option by default, it goes as value changed. But as you can see, there are a lot of options. But for us, it's important to track, okay, whenever the value changed, we want to call this new function. Okay, and let's connect it. And as you can see, that here we have a new function called regularity changed. And from this newly created action, we will access the regularity of our slider. So we will go for regularity slider and say, and take the value. If we press Alt and click on the variable here, on the property here, we will be able to see the type of it. So the type is float, and float is a fraction. But what we need, since we are not interested in taking 1.5 day, we only need the integers, we will convert it. We will convert this value to integer. So we took the value, converted it to integer, and then we will assign it to a newly created property. Let's
so this conversion will just cut the fraction part?
Yes, okay. That's right. And it will do the floor. So if it's 2.8, it will still be 2. So it will not, the conversion will be to the floor, not to the ceiling. Okay, so now when we can access this value, let's actually show the change, display the change with the labels that we have. So we will access our label and say regularity label. So we have it here. Actually, let's keep them together for it to look nice. And in the regularity label, since now we can access the UI element, we can also assign the text to it. And the newly text we'll still keep the word regularity, and pass it the newly created property. So here we have, and this way, when we change our slider, the change should reflect on the label itself. So let's see how it works now. So we press create a new habit, and let's drag. As you can see, the value is being changed. And this
Nice.
is that's how we connected the changes in our code to the changes in our UI and reflected them. So now probably since we have the UI being changed through the code now, one thing we can do is that, okay, we can now create a habit. Let's say what kind of habit we can have.
We already have walking, right? So maybe we need to go for gym.
Okay, so like visit gym or like workout, right? And maybe we want to do it every other day, let's say. So the regularity that we want to keep is twice. If we press save here, nothing happens. And if we press cancel here, nothing happens. And it's logical that since in our cancel tapped and the save tapped, in both actions there is actually nothing that we can like we haven't mentioned any code. So one thing, first of all, the easiest thing to configure is cancel. And here all we can do is we can do self navigation controller and pop view controller animated true. And pop view control,
it looks like a real stack, right?
Yes. So pop is the analogy with the stack, and actually view controller in fact it is a stack. So what is normally stack? You have vertical thing and you are putting things one on top of the other. So the one that enters last leaves the first, right? So that's the main idea. So here we do the same. So when we transition to new screen, we put it on top. And pop means remove it, so go back to the previous screen. So
nice.
this is the analogy that we have. And let's try actually if it's gonna work or not. So here's our new app, and we pressed plus, we pressed cancel, we go back. So now we have two ways to go back, either through habit or through the button cancel.
Nice.
So the next step will be to configure our save button that we have here. And it will be a little bit more complex, but still, I think very doable. So let's go into the body of the method called save type and save tapped. And the idea here is that we want to create a new habit, right?
Yeah.
We create a habit, and what we do is we initialize our model value. The title of it, the string, we will take from where? From the text field, right? Because that's where it should have been entered. So to have the title, we will take it from the text field, right? Where the user enters the value. So let title, we will go to the text field that we have, title text field, and we go for the text. As you can see, the type here is optional string. So in other words, it could have no value, it could be nil, or it could also be empty. And we don't need nil, we don't need empty, we actually need a value which has some text in it, right? So before passing the title to the newly created habit, probably we should check. First of all, it's not nil, and also that it's not empty value. So the way we can do it, we can do the following: guard, which is a special operator to check things that when you want to make sure. And we will say, okay, guard, the title is not new. That's what it means. Guard let title. In other words, this title will be only created if the value is not new.
So it's like unwraps an optional value.
That's right. So it's a special operator that allows you to unwrap the optional value and use it. So now we can insert the title in there and use it properly.
But how do you ensure the title is not empty string?
That's what also important to ensure. So what we can do, we can add another condition here and do it in the following way. So we put a comma and then say not, which we use the exclamation mark for it. Title is empty. So title should not be empty. So if the title is nil or it is empty, we say return. In other words, return means don't go further, stop here. So when we will press save, and if one of these conditions is not met, nothing will happen. So it's a very nice way to actually check that the values that you need are there. So we included the title. Now we can also access the regularity, right?
Yeah.
And the regularity, we will take it from the slider, right? We need the value of the slider. And we will do it in a way similar to here. So what we will do, we can copy this code, and let's check. So here the value passed to us is integer. It's not optional, so we can use it directly, which is nice. So let's put the regularity here. And last done, since the habit is newly created, there is no last done date. We will explicitly pass nil to it. So, and once we pass the nil, this is it.
So in this case, regularity slider ensures that the value is between minimum and maximum values.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So since here we put the minimum and maximum value for the slider, we will definitely get something between 1 and 7, right? And since we're also converting it to integer, we are sure that it will be a whole value, not a fraction. So a natural number actually, from 1 to 7. So this way we have the habit ready. Now the challenge is, since we have it ready, how do we return it to the previous controller? How do we return it to the previous controller where we have the list of all our habits? There are several ways to do it, and which one would you like to implement?
Well, we have delegation. We can use delegation pattern that we introduced previously, but it's a little bit harder to use in this case, maybe. So maybe the easiest one will be just using callbacks. So that's, yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You want to have a go at it?
Yeah, let's try. So what we're trying to do is we will pass the callback, which will be called by our controller every time we're saving value. So this callback generally represents a function which will be called. So we're creating new callback. Let's call it save callback. And we're putting a type, and the type of it is a little bit tricky. So what we will do is we want our function to take the habit, newly created habit value, and this is a type of parameter, and it will not produce any outer value, so we put it void. But for a view controller to have a property which is not set, we need to say it's optional, since we're not defining it now, but we guarantee that it will be set in the future. So we will call it now our save callback, and we're sending our newly created variable called habit. So this callback will be called every time save button tapped. But now nothing happens because we didn't set it. So let's go for it.
So the save callback is basically a variable which stores inside it a function, right? A method.
Yeah.
Which can be, I think, very tricky, especially, I mean, it took me a while to understand how closures work in Swift. But once you understand it, it's very sweet. And also that function, the signature of a function can be viewed as a type as well.
Yeah.
It's, I think, like it's very elegant, right?
Yeah.
So maybe if what we're doing is not entirely clear for you at the moment, just hang on. It's okay that closures does not have to be clear 100%. So save callback is actually a function. So here we have the habit and the void. It's a function which is stored inside the variable.
Yeah.
Which is an elegant idea, but maybe it can be confusing in the beginning when you're just introduced to it. Probably the most important thing for our users to understand is that this save callback, we created a property and we will call upon it here, right?
Yeah.
But see, we haven't declared, we just said that this will be the type of it. And since our main goal was to connect to pass the value of the habit back to this
Yeah.
one, the main controller will pass the function
Yeah.
and say, okay, use this function, you can use it to return me back the habit value,
Yeah.
right? So this is kind of a way to communicate, for a controller to communicate with its parent controller.
True. Yeah. Correct. So we will call it every time we're saving value. So here we passed our, we used our application, and now we need to actually pass it from previous controller. For doing so, we need to catch this transition from one controller to another. For doing so, tap on the figure, go to this inspector, attributes inspector, and set the identity of it. It can be anything. Let's make a new habit.
So basically, identifier will help us to literally identify that this is the SEGU that we're looking for.
Yeah. We will see it in a second. So now when everything is set, we need to go for code. And view controller has a function called prepare for SEGU. This function is called every time transition happens. And in here, we want to get our transition. So what we will do if we check for SEGU first.
So SEGU is like, it's basically transition from one screen to another, right?
Yeah.
And this method prepare, it helps us to do everything that is necessary before the SEGU actually happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do we do here?
We're checking that our SEGU is the SEGU that we need. And we're checking that our SIG is exactly the one that we set in storyboard.
Okay, probably we need the comparison operator here.
Yeah, true. Now the SIGU also stores the two controllers, the from and the destination one. So we need to get the destination one. And
so it's at-Habit view controller, right? The VC stands for view controller.
Yeah.
Right?
And we're going for SIGU dot destination, and it holds our destination view controller, which is at-Habit. But as you can see, it has type UI view controller. So we need to cast it from the general class to some specific, and we can make it like this using as and question mark at-Habit view controller. Now at-Habit view controller, if you pass, if you press Alt and press on it, you can see that it has type at-Habit view controller since we cast it.
That's right. That's right. And this is how type casting works in Swift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Great.
And now we will just get our save callback, which was set in at-Habit view controller, and tell it that okay, when our habit gets passed, just add it to our habits array.
So let's see what actually will be happening here, right? So first of all, we know that at-Habit VC is of type at-Habit view controller because of the type casting, right?
Yeah.
Since we know the type, we also know what variables are inside the type, what properties, and we know that okay, it has a property called save callback. And so save callback is itself, it's actually a function stored inside a variable, right?
Yeah.
Inside the property.
Yeah.
So now we are saying, okay, let's give it the value. So we are preparing for SEGU, and before the SEGU, we're saying, okay, this is the value for the save callback.
Yeah.
So this is what you will be calling here. And all we do here is habits append habit. So we add the habit, which will be created in the new controller, in the other controller, to the main controller.
True.
Right?
Yeah. And
Also,
as you can see, if you press Alt and on save callback, you can see its signature. So it says that it gets some variable of habit type, and this is what we do. This is our habit that were passed from the previous controller, and we're adding it. Another thing, it's big topic to discuss, but in short, the second view controller should not store the strong reference to the first one, since it creates the reference cycle. So all we need to do is just making our link weak, and type it here as
self-optional. Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, retain cycles and generally references, memory reference is like a huge topic. So maybe for our viewers, it's enough to say that when you reference self enclosures, most of the time you need to declare it as weak. So in other words, not to create a memory leak in your program. Right?
Yeah, but on this point we have a problem. We added new item into our habits array, but the table won't be updated.
Okay, so we expanded the array, but the table, okay, like we have to tell it to reload it to actually reflect the change on UI as well. How do we do that? How do we do that?
For doing so, we're going to our storyboard again, and we're pressing our habits view controller, and going for assistant. And we need to create a new reference for it. We're pressing Control, holding it, and dragging it to our view controller, calling it table view since it's table view. And here, as you can see, we created outlet, which is the reference between connection between the code and the interface builder. Now we have access to our table view. Let's reload it. So in here, when our at-Habit view controller will add a new value to our array, we want to also reload our table view. We call it reload data, and it will call the whole chain of this function, number of rows and self for row. So every time reload data is called, table view calls for data source for new data.
So we're saying there is a new habit. So renew the data and display the new habit. Okay.
Let's try it.
So we've done everything by now. Great.
Let's try.
Let's see.
So here, as you can see, we're pressing add button, and let's add something new. For example, in previous it was visit gym, and set the regularity every other day. And when we press the save button, it actually saved, but we didn't go back. So if we go back, we can see that the new value actually added.
Okay. Probably a logical thing to be like, it's obviously it's awesome that we have it. That's the main bit. But also maybe it will be logical to close the screen for adding new habit once it is added. Right?
And we do it the same way we did it before. We will call this function. Controller dot pop view controller and made it true.
Okay, so in case of the cancel, we're just saying do nothing and return. And in case of the save, we are extracting the title, the regularity, creating a new habit, passing this habit to the function that adds it to the habits array out to our save callback, and then only returning after doing everything there. Awesome. Let's see how it works.
We add new habit, visit gym. We set every other day, and we press save.
So today we learned several things. One of them was transition between screens and passing information from parent to the child and back. We also looked at how UI can be created and connected to code. And I think this functionality already will allow people to create a lot of cool stuff.
That was really nice.
So guys, thank you. You can find the source code in the description. And see you next time.
As-salaamu alaikum.
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.